All right. Good evening. Welcome to the 2019 Candidate Forum, presented by the Kiwanis Club of Issaquah, the Issaquah branch of AAUW, and the Issaquah Cable TV Commission. Welcome. I am Judy Rogers, and with me is Debbie Burrell. We are your moderators for tonight. In the next hour or so, we will hear from, and we only have 5 candidates this evening. Unfortunately, we do not see Lena Crofts here tonight, so we will just have the 5 of you. So we have Ann Moore, and she is unopposed for District 1. We have Harlan Gallinger, and then we have Minal, I'll get this correct, Ghassemieh, right? Okay, for District 3. Sydney Mullins, who was unopposed for District 4, and Suzanne Weaver, who is for District 5. So we will begin the forum with a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, whether you are opposed or not. The questions, though, will be only for those candidates who have an opponent. You will have 1 minute to respond to the question, and then the first responder will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Excuse me. We have our timer seated right here, and he will raise a warning at the 15th second and then a stop signal when time is up. We have gathered questions from the community, and if an answer needs further clarification, then we may ask you a follow-up question. Audience, you have index cards and pens that will be supplied to you. Just raise your hand if you would like an index card or a pen to write your questions, and then they will be collected and brought up here, and we will take a look at them. And so we will try to get to as many as we can. However, questions may not be directed to only one candidate. The last question will come from the opposed candidates for each other. They will ask their challenger a particular question, and then at the very end, all the candidates will then have 1 minute for their closing remarks. So let's get started. And because we all know that Issaquah is a very friendly town, I lived in this area for over 30 years. So therefore, we're only going to be using people's first names, and we're going to keep it all very friendly to everyone. So we will start with a 2-minute opening statement from Ann first, followed by Harlan, and then Minal, and then Sydney, and then Suzanne, and then we will then start on the questions. All right, so Ann?
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this candidates forum. I have served on the Issaquah School Board for 8 years and am running for my 3rd term. As it turns out, I don't have an opponent for the seat, so instead of telling you why you should vote for me, but please feel free to vote for me anyway, I'd like to tell you why I do this work. This started for me when my oldest daughter was in elementary school and my youngest daughters were in preschool. Our district had a systemic funding inequity and couldn't provide the same opportunities as neighboring districts. I became an advocate for a state funding system that would allow us to provide these opportunities. Eventually, I saw being on the school board as a way for me to extend my advocacy for our students. Finally, after all these years, we have implemented a 7-period schedule at 2 of our high schools and a dual language program at 2 elementary schools. Of course, by this time, my own children have not only graduated from Issaquah High School, but they have graduated from college. The state changed the funding structure for schools such that as a school district, we've been able to use our levy dollars to expand the program of education, not only by adding programs I mentioned, but by adding programs that support the whole child on their journey to graduate college and career ready. These programs include PBSES, graduation specialist, expanded CTE offerings, higher staffing ratios for our special needs children, more nurses and health room support, more guidance counselors, including mental health counselors. All of these pieces together provide the program of education our children need to launch them towards the next step in their life. The key to my ability to help implement these programs is the cooperative and collaborative hard work of each school board member in conjunction with our superintendent and his staff. In my time on the board, I'm most proud that our board was selected as the School Board of the Year by the Washington State School Directors Association in both 2015 and 2017. Those were moments of great pride because the work that our board does for all students of this district was recognized at a statewide level. Today I run for the school board and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Harlan?
Tonight, I'm grateful for the opportunity to introduce myself to each of you. My name is Harlan Gallinger, and I'm the current president of the Issaquah School Board. I grew up in Pierce County, graduated with degrees in history and chemistry from the University of Puget Sound. I served in the Teach for America program in rural North Carolina 20 years ago, when it was more like a domestic Peace Corps program, where 1 week before school started, I was placed as a 6th grade math and science teacher, although all summer I prepared as a high school chemistry teacher. Nonetheless, I fell in love with middle schoolers. After learning that firsthand that public education is the only equalizing opportunity in our country, I knew I'd be a lifelong advocate for public education, even if I was no longer in the classroom. I returned to Seattle to attend medical school at the University of Washington and now practice emergency medicine at multi-care hospitals, including Marybridge Children's Hospital. It is a privilege that I have the opportunity to live in this community and for my children to attend Issaquah schools. I currently have a 6th grader at Pine Lake Middle School and a 3rd grader at Discovery Elementary. Yet with privilege comes responsibility. I believe that I need to do my part to invest in making my community and my world a better place. I hope to share with you about some of my contributions over the past 4 years, including advocating for higher teacher salaries, known as the McCleary Fix, investments in early learning, addressing achievement gaps across our district, adoption of our equity policy, expanding mental health services from 5 schools to 11 schools, and deeper relationships with our local legislators. Public education advocacy is not something that I do for a title or to use this as a stepping stone to higher office, but because I want every child to have the opportunity for a great education. In addition to serving on the Issaquah School Board, I was appointed by the King County Council to serve a 3-year term on the Children and Youth Advisory Board, which administers the $392 million Best Starts for Kids levy in our county. I also am honored to serve as a Washington State School Directors Association statewide board of directors that provides education and support to all 1,477 school board members across our state. I look forward tonight to the dialogue and hope that you have the opportunity to learn more about how I advocate for educating and caring for the whole child.
Hi, my name is Minal Ghassemieh, and I'm running for position 3. And a little background on myself. I was born and raised in Washington, and I was actually born up at Madigan Army Hospital at Fort Lewis, which is where my mom served actively in the military as a primary care physician, and then she continued on there for 35 years. But we lived on the east side, and so she was commuting all those years. I went to UW for undergrad in business, and I got my law degree from Gonzaga Law School. And 9 years, my husband and I fell in love with the home in Sammamish, and we're fortunate enough to, start our roots here in Sammamish. And I currently have a almost 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and almost 3-year-old. 2 of my kids have birthdays this month, so we're on the almost. And the older 2 go to Creekside Elementary. I'm serving as the legislative rep for Creekside Elementary, and I served on the Levy Development Committee a few months ago. And I'm also I'm co-chair of the King County Immigrant and Refugee Commission, and that was a position I was appointed to by Councilmember Kathy Lambert and confirmed by the King County Council. I'm also on the board of One America, which is Washington's largest immigrant advocacy group, and it's a really rewarding time to be doing that work. For the last 10 years, I'm a practicing attorney, and for the last 10 years, I've focused my practice on humanitarian relief and family-based immigration. And as a survivor of childhood domestic violence, I'm really intentional about also providing pro bono services to other survivors of violence and families facing trauma. So why am I running for school board? I'm certainly not running for school board because I think that our school district isn't doing good work, but I just really feel that we can always do better across the board. And so I'm really committed to leading on issues like equity, on issues of mental care and substance abuse prevention, and also just really community engagement. And I just really believe in power of community and being present to make those things happen. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sydney Mullings. Thanks for the invite, and I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm a current school board member, and I was appointed this past spring to a vacancy on the board. I'll share a bit about my background. I'm a Chicago native. I've lived here, my family moved here about 5 years ago. We moved here with work, and I'm a first-generation immigrant. My family is from Jamaica. I have an undergrad degree in international politics and a master's degree in an area called human-computer interaction, which is all about how technology impacts people. I have a long history of nonprofit board service, having worked with agencies that are working on eradicating homelessness, as well as at-risk youth support services. I've had a 20-plus year career in tech as well. One of the reasons why we selected Issaquah when we moved here was the school district and the quality of care. I have quality of schooling. I have 2 kids in the school district today. I have a 8th grader, hard to say, an 8th grader at PCMS Middle School. I live here in the Highlands, and I have a 4th grader now. They're so big. A 4th grader at Grand Ridge Elementary, the almost. As I've been looking at how do I expand my engagement in the community after our move, I came upon some work the district was doing around equity, and particularly equity and discipline. That's how I got exposed to the school district and eventually to the board and to the position I have today. It's been a wonderful experience in joining this board and having the opportunity to work on many of the difficult things we've talked about and how we look after the whole child and make sure that they can all be successful in whatever pursuits they're looking for. I've been incredibly impressed with the tangible efforts underway within the district to make sure students succeed, particularly around equity. And I'm thrilled to be a part of the school board, and I look forward to continuing. Thanks.
And it's me. Hi, my name is Suzanne Weaver. I have been on the board almost 13 years. I've served as president twice. Prior to my service on the school board, I was the president of the district PTSA council, and I have a long history of treasurer extraordinaire at a number of PTAs, which I come by naturally as I have an MBA in finance. I've also served as treasurer of Volunteers for Issaquah Schools, which is the organization that advocates for school district bonds and levies. I've done that for 15 years. So why am I still running for the school board? I've asked myself that a bit, and it's really because Ann talked about a lot of the great things that we have done and are still doing, and I have really 2 commitments. I'm committed to providing opportunities for all students to have academic acceleration, remediation, and exploration. I think those are the 3 keys. And then I'm also committed to providing all students with the supports that they need to be successful, although the definition of success is going to be different for each student, and I think that's an important thing for us to understand. Some of the great things that we are working on and are still working on are the implementation of social emotional learning. We've done a lot in the elementary. We're moving that now into the middle and high school levels. The adoption of a board equity policy, which supports the district's work in cultural competency training, and that's really important as the demographics of our district are changing so much. It's important to make sure that all the different cultures feel welcome in our schools. So many other things going on, 7-period day, dual language elementary. I've got 5 seconds, so I'm not going to talk about those. Oh, he says I have 15. But anyway, we're involved in so many great things, and I can't stop wanting to work on them, so I'm still here.
All right, thank you all very much. We're now going to start the question portion, and so just remember that the unopposed will not get the question. And then at any time, if you would like us to repeat the question, we are happy to do that, especially sometimes if we have multi-part question and you might forget a part. So the first question, I'm going to start with you, Harlan. The Issaquah School District Board follows a policy governance model. Please explain your understanding of what that means and how it limits or enhances the influence of the school board.
You know, I've been doing this on the Issaquah School Board for 4 years, and I really love the policy governance model because what it does is it allows the board and the 5 of us to focus on putting together great policy that is going to guide the district. And so our job as a board is to develop the policy. And the other benefit of the policy governance board is that we have set up a monitoring calendar by which we monitor the actions of the school district, and every single operational part of the school district we monitor on a 12-month basis. And so every year we get to see every particular function within the district, which includes curriculum, it includes budget, it includes equity now. And so every single operational part of the district we monitor, and that's through the policy governance process.
All right.
I really like what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing about how the policy governance is working for this particular school board and this particular group of people. I think it's great that, there could be, objectives and goals and oversight and all of that coming from the top, but that there's autonomy for the superintendent and staff to really carry out the work that needs to be done. I mean, they are the experts in the field. They're the ones who are kind of on the ground. The only bit I would add, and this is like across the board, not just with policy governance, is just that elected officials be really accessible to community so that they're as constant in communication, whether it's about policy or whether it's about some other oversight item or some issue that comes up in the community. I would just hope that each of the school board directors would make sure that they are engaged with community and really listening and taking those perspectives into consideration when they make policy and when they make decisions that impact everyone.
And then Harlan, you have 30 seconds for
Sure.
a rebuttal or additional comment.
Yeah, I think it's probably rare that we get to be on the board during a time when we create a new policy, and EL 16 was our equity policy, and part of what that was not just the words that we created, but the process that we walked with the community with over 18 months, engaging our stakeholders, students, parents, teachers, community members. And that was the brilliant part of the process that really made the impact of our equity work so important.
All right. Suzanne?
Okay, well, I've been around almost since policy governance was implemented. I watched the previous board develop the policies. I think policy governance works really well in the Issaquah School District. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the way it works is we set the parameters. We say to the superintendent, go off and achieve these goals for students. And as long as you obey these 16 rules, basically, that we've set for you, which are based on our board values, you can implement the programs that you want. And the reason that works well, other boards, the superintendent comes to the board and says, I'd really like to do this dual language kindergarten program. Do I have board approval? And the board votes yay or nay. Well, if the superintendent does something wrong, then you've got, well, the board approved it, so you can't really hold the superintendent responsible because the board was responsible too. This way, we say what the goals are, and the superintendent is responsible for his own actions. So I think it works really well, and we do have the ability to tweak our policies if we see something where we think we need more oversight.
All right, now I'm going to take a little bit of, time because Lena is not here, and I'll give each of you 30 seconds to answer this part. If you remember, I asked you how it limits or enhances, and all of you said how wonderful and how well it worked. So are you telling me that there is nothing in this policy governance model that limits the influence of the school board? So I'm going to go back. I'm going to start with Harlan. I'll give you 30 seconds. Our timer will take care of that.
Sure. I don't believe it actually does limit. It's incumbent on us as a board to adjust the policies as we see necessary in order to get the outcomes we want. And so when we looked at the impact of social media use and the impact on mental health, we added to that to make the policy more robust, to hold the superintendent and the district accountable for those things with regard to mental health. So because we have the flexibility and every year we go and review our policies, see what needs to be done, I don't believe it's a limitation at all.
All right. Okay, so Minal.
So as an attorney, I'm just geared to like look at the other side. So I'm going to respond to the limitations. I mean, I think that the way that it might limit board influence is, you know, they're setting a goal and they're being pretty broad about it and, you know, achieve this goal within these, you know, limitations, and then maybe they don't agree on how it gets carried out. So at that point, you can't say anything, right? You can't say anything even though there is some oversight. But I think that I would chalk up to like a personality thing. Like if you just didn't agree with how a certain plan was carried out, that might limit your influence. But I don't think that's a huge deal.
All right, Suzanne.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on how the board reacts to an unexpected situation. And I'll give you an example. A number of years ago, a different superintendent announced that we were going to change the block schedule at Liberty to a 6-period day. There was not a lot of public engagement around that. The board was very concerned there was no public engagement. The board went back, looked at its policy. We changed an executive limitation that said the superintendent can't make a material change to the high school schedule without board approval, because we felt that that was important and we felt that he had overstepped. So that's how we manage. It can be a limitation if you don't respond quickly.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. And we'll start with Minal. We all want our Issaquah students to have the best education possible, but the resources are, and have always been, scarce. What considerations will you make when deciding what resources to put where?
So that's a really good question, and also an interesting question coming off of the Levy Development Committee. So the work that we did over those 2 or 3 days was really eye-opening to see like which line items go where. So which line items go under state and which line items go under going to be covered by the levy. And so I guess I would take a look at that first. So I would take a look at, you know, what are we already covering, and then what are the needs? And the needs really come from different parts of the community. And so that was a really great experience because we, you know, folks were there from all over the community, and you could hear what each person was saying, and there was a lot of similarities, and there was some, you know, kind of confusion about, oh, well, I can't believe nurses aren't covered by the state budget. So I would really look at priorities based on community needs, and hopefully we would be able to discuss that as a board and with the superintendent. And so I would look at my resources and make decisions based on community need.
Okay, Harlan?
So over the past 4 years, we've seen the budgeting process evolve with the advent of McCleary and higher state funding for our teacher salaries. And so we've gotten to really look at what our levy dollars do, and that's our local enrichment. And that really shows us, so we get to finally put money where our community wants it, as Ann had talked about, to a 7-period day. We spend it with mental health counselors. We've invested in social emotional learning. We add more funding for nurses, for counselors, for dean of students, to provide behavioral coaches in our elementary schools. And all these things we do because it's a community value. And so as a board, we talk about it every year that we want our budget to be a reflection of the community's values, because our budget is a belief and value statement.
Okay, anything to add, Minal?
No, I agree. I agree completely. I think it just echoes exactly what I was saying, so thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Suzanne, but Suzanne, I'd just like to remind our audience, Suzanne is an opposed candidate. Her opponent is chosen or opted out from coming tonight, but we do want to hear from you.
Okay, well, and I have to say, I agree with pretty much everything Harlan said. You know, at the beginning of the budget process, the board set some general parameters around that this budget has to address the board's ends and has to address the opportunity gap, and we have a handful of things. It's about a 1-page document where we can be really more creative and more intentional is in the levy dollars. And we've come from a place before when we were always like 290th out of 295 districts in funding, where we went to the community and said, just give us all the money because we desperately need all the money. And McCleary changed that. We got a significant infusion into our budget, and we can now be very thoughtful with the levy dollars. And as Harlan said, put them exactly into the programs that we feel the community values and that we feel will address our opportunity gaps and provide students with that acceleration, remediation, and exploration opportunities that they need.
All right. Next question, and we are going to start with Suzanne, and you don't have your opponent here make comment. This, I'm going to make two statements, and then I will ask the question, and it is surrounding, I'm going to call them health concerns. So we recently lost 2 Skyline students due to drug overdose laced with fentanyl. The other part is if half of those, we're talking about students with a mental health condition, will experience by age 14, then looking at those 2 concerns, what steps should the district take to ensure early intervention initiatives are available in school settings?
Okay, well, I think we have done some of that, and again, with our levy dollars by adding mental health counselors to our middle schools, and I think we have 2 that split their time across our elementaries. So we are moving towards more early intervention, or I should say early support to students who need intervention in the younger grades. Other than that, we need to be working, well, we also have our Healthy Youth Survey results, and we can see where the issues are at the different levels in our schools. And then we've been working with our cities. We just met with the city of Issaquah last night. We'll be meeting with the city of Sammamish to talk about other ways that we can intervene and address mental health, both mental health issues and substance abuse issues with community partners, with law enforcement, and partnerships.
Thank you. So then, excuse me. So then, Harlan, your opportunity to answer the question. Do you want me to repeat it? No, all right.
So there's a couple things, as we've invested in social emotional learning and supports, we have now created a process by which we screen every single elementary student through the BZ, and we collect data to sort of address sort of what are their needs and what are the impacts for them from a social emotional learning standpoint. When they transition to middle school, we do an SDQ to evaluate every single middle school student to identify, hey, which student internalizes and externalizes, and then pair them up and match them with counseling resources as needed. They then reach out to all parents of middle schoolers who they identify as, hey, your student may potentially be at risk for XYZ. So that's what we do as a district. I think our job as policymakers is to engage our community and to partner with our cities and have conversations on, hey, what do we do together to maximize tax dollars? And so what we've done as a result of this is we've met with the city of Issaquah. We're meeting with the city of Sammamish next week. We're going to talk about, hey, from a health and human services standpoint, what is it we need to do to leverage our tax dollars to help our students?
Okay, Minal.
So I really appreciate all the social emotional surveys that are out there. I've been to a number of community forums to discuss those results, and I really appreciate the work that's being done. As far as drug prevention, I had a conversation with my first grader's teacher, and we sort of just were talking about Halloween party, and then we moved on to this is such a tragedy, and what are we going to do about it? And I asked her, I'm like, so what kind of conversations are you guys having? And she kind of looked at me and she said, I just cross my fingers and hope nobody brings it up because I would not know, I'm not equipped to respond. There's no program. So I think we can do better. And I think that drug prevention programs need to start as early as kindergarten so that elementary school age children have the tools to make healthy choices and build on those healthy choices as they move through middle school and high school. I'm a product of DARE, and people can say what they want to about that program, but it worked. It was very informative, and it just planted the seed. And I would like to see our district adopt something that is going to, address these type of issues for the youngest members of our community.
All right. Harlan, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I think it's really important that we provide a continuum of services, and one is to identify, hey, who are the kids that are at risk, and really focus on the prevention and intervention strategies. I think the second part is that we need to do a better job of connecting kids who are already involved with substance abuse and providing support for them. Like in the city of Sammamish, there is 0 providers for substance abuse counseling, and that's a big deal. There's 65,000 residents, 20,000 students, and I think it's really important that that's our job and responsibility to make sure that we advocate for those resources, and if we need to leverage tax dollars through our district budget, then so be it.
Okay, let's go to something a little less heavy. There's been a lot of talk about the need to expand middle and high schools' curriculum to include more trade skills. Are you satisfied with the offerings at Issaquah schools? And if not, what can be done to improve them? Suzanne?
And I went first last time.
Well, your opponent's not here.
Oh, that's not fair. I do think, now you're asking specifically at middle school?
Middle school and high school.
Okay. I will say at high school, we're doing quite a bit to expand. Our acronym is CTE, which is for Career and Technical Education, because of the 7-period day that we've implemented at Issaquah and Skyline. Because kids have one more period, they have one more opportunity. We're really hoping that they don't take an AP course, another AP course, but that they go out and explore something different. So we've added teachers in that area, and we've added some classes. At middle school, it's a little bit harder. You're sort of at the mercy of what teachers are trained in what areas. So you find sometimes that different middle schools will offer different CTE classes. And that's something that we're trying to address to get, the district is working on having more teachers certified to teach CTE classes because it is a specialized certification. But as I say, the 7-period day at Issaquah and Skyline is really giving us opportunities to expand that program.
Okay, and as we go to Mina first, could you also talk about beyond technology classes for trade skills?
Sure. So I really like the idea of expanding those types of non-traditional academic courses in the regular school environment. I think it's another showing another commitment to equity and really bringing everybody, student body together, so people aren't separating because of their interests. And of course, as a director, I would want to look at capacity and make sure that that would fit within whatever school community we're talking about, whether it's middle school or high school, make sure there's capacity and teachers available to do those courses. But as a whole, I think just as much as you can bring to a student community and giving people opportunities to explore what they do best or just to find out if that's something that they're interested in would go a long way in terms of making it more inclusive for people's interest in the student body.
Ron?
So, as Suzanne has mentioned, when we moved to the 7-period day, a large part of that hiring, we hired 13 new career and technical education teachers. And then one of the philosophies of our district is that we allow our students to schedule themselves for what they want to take, and then we build a master schedule around that. So prioritization is based on what students want to take, not what teachers want to teach. And that's a great philosophy that allows our students to sort of pursue and explore what they want to do. One of the things that our district has done is not only we have invested into our comprehensive high schools is that Gibson Eck, which graduated its first class, is focused completely on that experiential learning. And so they are paired in the community with a mentor in business or trades 2 days a week. And it's the second high school in the state that doesn't have any credits to graduate. It's all competency-based learning. And so we're doing it real world. And it's been really neat to see. I think one of the things is, as we've done all these investments, we kind of need to let them just take hold. Because one of the things is a system as large as we are, we want to make sure that we aren't trying to move things so fast that our administration and teachers can't keep up.
Okay. Mila, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to add my appreciation for Gibson Eck. I've met some amazing students from there. One is in the audience, but it's a fantastic program. All the students there are happy, healthy, and doing what they're interested in, and it's really, really motivating to see that play out successfully.
excuse me, I always seem to have a cough just as the time I'm ready to talk. I don't know how many of you have been on the OSPI website, but there is a ton of data. So Issaquah has a widely diverse school culture, primarily North End and South End, between North End and South End schools. When it comes to our schools, how do you balance equal and equitable distribution of resources? So I'm going to start with Harlan.
Sure. I think this gets to the heart of what our board has been doing over the past 2 years, is really to focus on equity and to have our district have tough conversations about what that really means. What that means is that we need to be okay with some schools that are performing at the 85 to 90% success rate by third grade reading to have bigger class sizes at the expense of our schools that are performing at the 65th to 70% reading level in order to have smaller class sizes or more supports. And that takes courageous leadership in order to do that, because it's really to explain to our community that it really is about equitable supports, not equal supports. And it's up to us to have those community conversations that are important. And that's what we've done and been moving towards. And it's a lofty goal, and it's far away in some ways as far as how budgeting works and how allocations are done for our buildings. But that's the direction that we've been headed, and I'm excited for the work that we've been doing.
I would generally agree with Harlan. I think that it's really a matter of being true. If you're really committed to true equity, then you're committed to making sure every child has the same opportunity across the board. So if something is working for somebody in our community, then we should see that on the North End and the South End also. The only thing I would add is that some of the more marginal communities have some unique needs. And so I would want to be engaged with those communities to find out how best they're going to receive a certain program, or a certain, we're going to add some more money into this program, how do you think that's going to work? So I would really want to make sure that we're being cognizant of the communities that we're talking about, and making sure that, best practices here are also going to be best practices there. So that's the only thing I would add, but I absolutely agree with Harlan.
Harlan, I'm going to go ahead and let you have your 30 seconds for your comment. And then I'll let Suzanne, and then I'm going to come back around with something else to ask you.
Sure. As we have unveiled and achieved more funding levels, we start with our most highly impacted schools when we introduce supports. And so that's something that we have done historically and will continue to do. So our most highly impacted schools have mental health counselors at the elementary level. And ultimately, we'd love to see that everywhere. But that's where we start in order to make sure that they get the equitable supports that they need.
And I'm going to echo a lot of what Harlan said, because we absolutely do make a distinction between equal and equitable. And this is a conversation we've been having a lot in our retreats over the last couple of years. We've historically always talked about, well, Issaquah is such a high-achieving district, and you kind of buy into that mantra. And then when you start going through the school improvement plans, we meet every year with each principal and go through the results at each school. And you realize we are high-achieving, but some schools achieve more highly than others. And that's when you realize we really do have to have more supports at certain schools. And we've also had help from the Issaquah Schools Foundation with piloting certain programs I know we piloted a pre-kindergarten program and some other math supports and things at Briarwood before those rolled out into other schools at the district, because, you have to start where kids really need the supports.
Thank you. And your additional comments means I don't need to do my follow-up question. Thank you very much. We will move on.
Okay, this time we will start with Minal and then Harlan. If elected, what would you hope would be your key accomplishments of the board during your years of service? And what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to remember you for having brought to the board end of your term?
Sure, that's a great question. So one of my big, passion projects, and it has been since I was very young, is equity, and really looking at racial, inequities, looking at socioeconomic inequities, and looking at just all the ways that folks that need help are not getting help. And so one of the things I look at in our beautiful community is how diverse it is. And we're looking at our changing demographics, and I'm appreciating the efforts that our district is making to respond to changing demographics. But again, we can always do better. And there's a lot of school districts around Washington State, as well as the country, who are doing things about cultural competency and really bringing that to the youngest members of our community. And when I say that, I mean elementary school. So, it would be amazing I know there's ethnic studies coming down from the state, but if we could bring that into elementary schools, I believe we would be sending kind, empathetic, respectful kindergartners and grade schoolers into middle school and into high school, and they would just be ambassadors for, just being kind and empathetic. And I think that I would really like to focus my efforts on equity in elementary school.
So I've been really proud of the work our board has done over the past 4 years on equity. And, it's been really fun this year to see it really get some legs. And one of the ways that it has done that this year is 3 years ago, we started planning, and finally implementation this year was our dual language program. And we have 2 kindergarten classes this year, Spanish immersion. And what it's done is it's allowed us to create so much more rich, culturally responsive learning environment for all of our kids. It's allowed an opportunity for our parents to be able to engage who are native Spanish speakers and who would normally be very uncomfortable coming into our classic elementary school environment. So I want to continue that equity work, and really when I think about homework and grading, and I think that we really need to look at what our practices are that could be more equitable for how we do homework and grading policies in order for every student to have the opportunity to reach their highest potential. And that's the work that I want to see the board engage in over the next 4 years.
Minal, any other?
Yeah, just to build on equity also means to, push some policies that maybe we haven't introduced. For example, recruiting more teachers of color. For example, learning more about just culture and what do our demographics look like, and bringing that history into the classroom. So, and I think that takes community engagement, and that takes strong relationships with teachers to figure out what is going to look best. Best practices for teachers. We can do a lot of advocacy, but I think that part of it, just shaking hands with teachers, sitting down and talking about what is going to work best in the classroom is really important.
Suzanne?
I'm going to go in a little bit different direction here. I would like to see us do more with recognizing different definitions of success. We focus a lot in the school district on academic success, and it's just an expectation. Kids are supposed to do their very best, get high test scores, get straight A's, whatever they're supposed to do, go off to college. We have a lot of kids for whom that isn't necessarily an option. We have kids who are special ed. We have kids who are coming here from other countries, ELL kids. We have kids who are just challenged by academics, but they still want to be successful in one way or another. And I think this is sort of part of our social emotional learning and some of the other things we're doing. I think we just need to be more open to recognizing other kinds of successes. For, the special ed kid to get over this bar is much more difficult than for the really privileged kid to get over this bar. And I think, and maybe that kind of ties back into the equity work too, but I would like to see us just recognize lots of different types of success for our students.
So we're going to start, Suzanne. You get to be, of course. So we've been listening earlier to the challenges faced by the city regarding budgets. So as a school board, what one program or service in the school district budget would you cut, and what one new program or service would you add?
What would I cut and what would I add? I'm not sure I want to answer that question, partly because we have implemented a lot of new programs and services, and one of the conversations we've had with our superintendent is we're not going to do anything new right away. You know, when we go out and show people the 2020 levy, it's maintenance of what we're doing, because we're sort of at capacity in terms of what we can absorb in terms of new things. We have introduced a lot of new things in the last couple of years, such as the dual language program, the 7-period day, more cultural competency training. I'm not really in a place where I want to cut something and add something else, because I think what we've done is really good, and I don't know what I would want to add at this point. So I know it sounds like I'm hedging the question, but I don't have a good answer for you.
All right. Well, that does happen, so I totally understand. So that means then we're going to move over, and of course, I think it's Harlan, you get to be first on the spot here.
Sure. I would have to agree with Suzanne. You know, we've been strategic with our additions such that my focus over the past 4 years and what I'm passionate about is early learning. And I think the more we invest in early learning, the greater chance we have for every student to be successful. And so the more investments we can do in that, the better. We, during these 4 years, we've added more ECAP spots for our low-income preschool. We've created a new preschool that opened up this year in our old admin building. And so the more investments that we can do in that, the better, and we have a chance to close that achievement gap before it even starts by 3rd grade. And so that's where I would want to see more investments go to.
Is it okay if I go ahead? So having served on the levy development committee, I saw all the line items, and it was really educational and really kind of eye-opening to see, you know, where everything falls. And so I can't even imagine cutting any of those important programs. I just can't. But what I would add is drug abuse prevention, starting in elementary school, you know, customizing it to middle school, and customizing it even more to high school, so that every student in every school gets that information, so there's not another tragic death because of, you know, not knowing how dangerous it is to buy an opioid, you know, off of the street. So people understand what the dangers are starting from elementary school.
Harlan?
So I totally can appreciate adding curriculum on drug abuse. I think it's a couple of things. One, we have to be careful about whatever we add to a teacher's plate. Their plates are already so full that it's not one more thing, that it's strategic. But more importantly, I think we need to get at the root issue about why are kids in our community using drugs in the first place. And if we say, gosh, they're overscheduled, or the community is too permissive, or it's easy access in the homes, like, I think that's where we need to start with, is sort of why are kids turning to it and why is it so easily accessible in our communities? I think that will be far richer bang for our buck.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's go to one last question here. Many people, including in our audience, are not aware that the Issaquah School District also has educational oversight for Echo Glen Children's Center, where incarcerated youth are in prison, essentially. What would you as a school board member do to support our students at Echo Glen? And we're going to start with Lena. Excuse me, she's not here. Suzanne.
I think you should let Lena go. Well, We have supported Echo Glen for a number of years, and primarily in terms of district responsibility, we help them with hiring of teachers and principals and oversight and that sort of thing. We don't have financial responsibility. That's a pass-through. In terms of actually supporting the students, we have mobilized our PTAs with providing art docent programs and financial support for certain student activities and that sort of thing. I think there's very tricky financial rules as to what the district can do and can't do. The PTAs have more latitude, and I think the foundation has also done some things in that regard. The situation at Echo right now is difficult in that the population has dwindled, which makes staffing more difficult and support more difficult. And this is really an ongoing problem that our superintendent is working very closely with the various people in government, and I don't remember who they are, that have oversight of those facilities, because it is getting harder to effectively staff with the low numbers of the student body. So that's an issue.
Okay. Minal?
So I think that it's pretty incredible that our district kind of oversees a juvenile and detention center, and I think it's nice, and I think it's a huge opportunity area for our understanding and for our just common respect for people that are in these type of situations. They are young, and they deserve school just like anybody else in this jurisdiction and anybody else around the country. I would definitely want to better understand what the policies are and how we could support. So I think starting with the teachers that are on the ground there, and then finding out from them how is it going, just doing that general accessibility check-in. And then if young people also feel like they need to reach out and talk to somebody in a leadership position, then we should be accessible to that too. But I think more than anything, it's really understanding how the programs are working and whether they're working for the people there.
So Echo Glen is an interesting opportunity for us to engage our legislators, because if the average student there is only there for 90 days, and it really exposes the inequities of the prototypical school model by which even it's funded, where we don't get the supports for mental health counselors, for social emotional learning, for the 40% of kids there who are labeled as special education. And so our job is to advocate for those students by advocating for a budget that reflects what they need. And that's what we have been doing and will continue to do, because they need to have structural changes in the budgeting for their school to address long-term and permanent and sustainable changes in funding that will allow us to support those kids, even if they're only with us for 90 days.
Last word?
Just, regardless of time, you just have to do what you can to support those children equally as you would any other student in the Issaquah School District.
Right. Thank you very much for answering the questions that came from the community. We are now moving to the portion where you ask your opponent. So, Harlan, if you would please begin with your question for Minal.
Okay, Artie. So, in your campaign literature, you mention how the Issaquah School Board needs to be representative of our community, and you've mentioned things about sort of racial equity. And I guess for me, when I see that there's comments about how our board may not be reflective or representative of our community, I want to know, for me, being an Asian male, so I obviously identify with more than 20% of our school population in the district and 50% of the gender. And so I want to know, how is it that I am not representative of or responsive to my?
I'm not sure I've ever said that you're not representative of our community, so I'm not sure how to answer that question. What I can say is that elected officials and bodies of elected leaders across the country should reflect the communities that they're representing. And I think that's really important because there's just a level of trust with, if you identify with somebody in an elected position, or even as a teacher or somebody in a in a place of authority, that there's a basis of trust and understanding that gets communicated, and then I think decisions made are, representative of those folks. And so that is my kind of mantra in every involvement I have in the community. And it's not just about race, and it's not just about the color of a person's skin. It's about understanding the issues and representing those issues on behalf of the community. So thank you for that question. I'm not sure about the you not being representative part. I've never said that, but I hope that answers your question.
So, Minal, your question for Harlan?
Sure. So at a recent community needs forum, an issue was raised about certain populations in the Issaquah school district, specifically young people of color, being overrepresented in disciplinary actions and underrepresented in honors programs. So I guess my question to you is, as president for the last 4 years, and just in your personal, journey in life, what steps have you taken to address that issue? And what would you want the school board to do to address that issue?
Sure, thank you. We rotate presidency, so it's only been 1 year, luckily. But, the discipline data is actually what drove us to start this whole equity journey and conversation 3 years ago. And I have to credit Director Moraldo in the audience, who brought that to the forefront. And so we look at that, and we have been poring over that and disaggregating all of the data, not just in discipline, but as you say, in achievement. And so we're looking at that to make sure that, our data now shows, like, there's bars on sort of how many kids are white, for example, and how much are they represented in certain advanced classes in our middle schools, to really look at, say, hey, are we making sure that we're giving every child the opportunity to be successful and choose whatever class they want to choose? And then also for the kids who may need to challenge themselves but need more supports, how are we supporting those kids to make sure that they have the opportunity to be successful and pursue whatever it is that they're passionate about, whether it's college, trades, or anything else. So.
Right. And Suzanne, I am sorry to say that you don't have your opponent here, so you cannot ask her a question. And
That's such a good question.
Turn cannot. So sorry. Anyway, so now at this point, each candidate, including the ones who are unopposed, you have 1 minute for closing remarks. So because we began with Anne, we're going to go backwards, and guess what, Suzanne? You get to start, and then and then it will be just go along this way. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, first off, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity, and for those of you who stayed up kind of past my bedtime to listen to it. In some ways, I'm a bit sorry that my opponent is not here, because I think there are some distinct differences between us. One thing we can agree on is, she says in her campaign literature, that we can do better as a school district. And I would agree with that, but it's something that I would approach positively, collaboratively, and from a position of strength, where I think, unfortunately, she sees the district in an area of weakness. So I think that's unfortunate. I think we have very different leadership styles. I consider myself extremely collaborative. And finally, I think experience is a huge issue for me. I've been doing this for almost 13 years. I've worked very closely. I have relationships with district administration. I have relationships within the community. At the state legislature, I've been endorsed by all 6 of the 5th and 41st district legislators. I really enjoy this work. I'm passionate about doing what's best for students, and I would really like the opportunity to do this for another 4 years. So thank you.
Sydney.
Thanks for having me, inviting me. It was a wonderful conversation this evening. It was great to go through all of these topics that in the last 6 months I've gotten to learn deeply. Echo Glen is certainly a location I've gotten to spend some time at and feel very moved by the students I've met and been able to develop a relationship there. CTE programs, I would just love to come back to and talk about how CTE is not just technology, and it represents many areas of exploration: journalism, sports medicine, and multiple areas. So I just want to make sure we're clear. I'd love for people to explore what the district is providing there. I think it's pretty fantastic. And I think, you know, what I've experienced is a great transparency of information in my time on the board to the budgets, to the staff, and to the policies we're driving forward. That includes significant amount of time of recurring community events and discussions with teachers and students and parents, and I look forward to continuing this work with this group.
Minal?
Thank you for this opportunity to have these conversations and do them all in one place. So I'm very appreciative of the opportunity. You know, it's been rewarding and challenging campaigning for all these months. It's really rewarding to go to knock on a door and have a one-on-one conversation with a parent or just a community member who wants to talk about our schools. It's challenging to ask people to meet you, make time to meet you and understand you, and then vote for you. You know, those are challenging things, but you know, I'm in it, and I think that this is an important place to be. I do believe the work comes from an area of strength, as Suzanne said. I'm living in the school district because I think the school district is great, but I always am in a position to do better for our young people. You've heard from me about some of my positions and my platforms, and I just want to work collaboratively with directors, superintendent, with teachers, and other members of the community so that we are raising the level of service for our young people year after year.
So not only do I have the experience to seamlessly continue the work we're doing on the Issaquah School Board and District to ensure that every student has the access to the supports they need to be successful, but I believe that I'm uniquely qualified to serve our community on the Issaquah School Board. During the most recent opiate crisis, I've been able to bring my expertise as an emergency physician to the discussion with city leaders and law enforcement in both Issaquah and Sammamish. I'm on the front lines of this crisis in the ER. In furthering the discussion on youth mental health, I bring the perspective as a physician. I can talk about the research behind adverse childhood events and how it impacts our students who then become adults. And I care for these kids who come into our emergency department in crisis. I look forward to deepening the district's partnerships with our local governments and nonprofits to protect our children and community from substance abuse, and leveraging relationships with legislators to ensure that Issaquah continues to receive the education funding that it needs to provide an excellent education to every student. I'd be grateful for your vote to reelect me to serve for another 4 years in the Issaquah School Board. Thank you.
And I would like to say thank you for having me here tonight and being a part of this discussion. Anytime we can have a conversation around education, we are taking one of the steps that will improve education. But I'd also like to thank the community that was here and that is engaged and listening, whether you're in the audience or through the camera. And I encourage everybody to make sure you get out and vote, because that is the very powerful action that you can take. And I would also encourage the community to be engaged with the school board as far as the priorities of the community, because the community and the community values are what we are attempting to carry through our schools. And we so much enjoy the engagement and the learning from our communities. And so I encourage you to reach out and share with us your input and your values. So thank you.
So thank you to all of you candidates. Thank you for agreeing to come tonight and for agreeing to serve the often challenging and always complex Issaquah School Board and the whole school district. Your service is very much appreciated. The citizens are lucky to have you. So good luck to each of you as you complete your campaigns over the next few weeks. The Cable TV Commission, as Ann already mentioned, and staff have been recording tonight's forum to be replayed every day until Election Day, which I believe is November the 5th. It will be on City Channel 21 and streamed on the city's website. So please tell your friends to tune in so they too can become more informed and make great decisions. So thank you all very much, and good night.